Have you ever found yourself staring at your bank account with a knot in your stomach, feeling that familiar wave of anxiety wash over you even before the numbers fully load on your screen? That moment of hesitation before making a purchase, not because it's unwise, but because somewhere deep inside, a voice whispers that you don't deserve it, that there isn't enough, that safety is always just one step away from slipping through your fingers? If you're nodding right now, I want you to know something profound. That feeling isn't really about the money at all. It's about an invisible wound you've been carrying, perhaps for your entire life. And today, we're going to talk about where that wound came from, and, more importantly, how to finally heal it. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the globe. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Now let me ask you something else. When was the first time you learned that money was scarce? Maybe it wasn't a dramatic moment at all. Maybe it was just watching your parents' faces tighten when bills arrived in the mail. Maybe it was a careless comment from a well-meaning relative who said, "Money doesn't grow on trees, you know." Maybe it was the silence that fell over the dinner table when you asked for something you wanted, and the unspoken tension that followed told you everything you needed to know about asking for more. These moments might seem insignificant. You might not even remember them consciously, but your subconscious mind? It recorded every single one. It absorbed those messages like a sponge absorbs water, and slowly, quietly, those experiences built the foundation of your relationship with abundance, or rather, with the lack of it. Has this ever happened to you? You work hard, you do everything right, you follow all the practical advice about budgeting and saving, yet somehow the feeling of scarcity never quite leaves. The numbers in your account might even grow, but the anxiety remains. The fear persists. Because here's what most people don't understand. You can't solve an internal wound with external solutions. Stay with me until the end of this video, because what you're about to discover might completely transform the way you think about money, abundance, and your own worthiness to receive. This isn't about another budgeting strategy or a get-rich-quick scheme. This is about something far more fundamental. The truth is, every time you check your balance with fear, every time you hesitate before spending, not out of wisdom, but out of anxiety, every time you lie awake calculating and recalculating what you have against what you owe, you're actually doing something to yourself. You're reopening that old wound. You're letting it bleed into your present moment, into your decisions, into the very fabric of your daily experience. But here's where it gets interesting, and here's where everything changes. The healing you're searching for doesn't begin where you think it does. You've been taught your entire life that money is something out there, something external to you. Think about it for a moment. From your very first memories, the message was clear. Money is something you have to earn, chase, pursue, receive from forces beyond. Your control. Your parents worked for it, struggled for it, worried about it, as if it were some elusive creature that might or might not grace them with its presence. And you absorbed that lesson without question, didn't you? This belief, this fundamental assumption that wealth exists outside of you, that's the real disease we're dealing with. Not the actual lack of money in your bank account, not the bills piling up or the debt you're carrying. Those are just symptoms. The real problem lives much deeper in the hidden architecture of your mind, in the assumptions you've been carrying around like invisible baggage for decades. Here's what's actually happening, and this might shake up everything you thought you knew about transformation and personal growth. Your imagination, that powerful creative force within you, has been faithfully building a prison around you based on these beliefs. But here's the crucial revelation. It's not punishing you. It's not judging you. It's simply doing what imagination does. It creates. It takes whatever you assume to be true, whatever you feel deeply about yourself and your relationship with abundance, and it projects that assumption outward into the world of form. This isn't positive thinking. This isn't some motivational philosophy designed to make you feel better temporarily. What I'm sharing with you right now is law, as exact and impersonal as gravity itself. When you drop something, it falls. You don't question it. You don't doubt it. It simply is. The same precision applies here. Your imagination takes whatever assumption you hold with feeling and makes it visible in your external reality. If this resonated with you, subscribe to this channel. I create content for people ready for real transformation, not just theories. Hit that subscribe button and let's continue this journey together. Think about the impact of this for a second. Every assumption you've carried about money being scarce, about having to struggle, about not being worthy of abundance, about rich people being somehow different from you. Your imagination has been faithfully taking all of that and constructing your experience accordingly. Not because you're being punished, not because the universe is against you, but because that's the creative mechanism at work. It doesn't ask whether your assumption is true or false, healthy or destructive. It simply asks, what do you believe yourself to be? And then it goes about making that belief visible in every corner of your life. This is the hidden truth behind why some people seem to effortlessly attract wealth, while others struggle endlessly despite working just as hard, if not harder. The difference isn't in their circumstances or their luck or even their opportunities. The difference is in their assumptions, in what they've accepted as true about themselves and their relationship with money. Now, I want to go even deeper into this revelation, because understanding the mechanics of how this works changes everything. Write in the comments, I'm ready to shift, if this is resonating with you right now. There's something within you right now, even as you're listening to these words, that refuses to accept limitation as your final destination. Can you feel it? That quiet stirring, that subtle rebellion against the idea that scarcity is just how things are for you. That's not wishful thinking. That's not naive optimism. That's the voice of your deeper self, the part of you that remembers a profound truth you've somehow forgotten along the way. You are not a creature at the mercy of circumstance. You never have been. What you are, what you've always been, is a creator. The only difference between where you are now and where you want to be is this. You've been creating unconsciously. You've been wielding this incredible creative power without awareness, like someone stumbling around in the dark, bumping into furniture they didn't know was there. And now you're being called, right? Here in this moment, to create with full consciousness, with intention, with understanding of the mechanism at work. But here's where most people get trapped in a devastating cycle. And I want to be completely honest with you about this, because it's costing you years of your life. The pain you're experiencing, that constant anxiety about money, that feeling of being stuck despite your best efforts, it comes from spending your entire existence trying to change your financial circumstances by manipulating the world of effects. Think about what you've been doing. You've been reorganizing the deck chairs on a sinking ship. You've tried different jobs, different budgets, different strategies, different approaches. You've pushed and struggled and worked yourself to exhaustion, all while attacking the reflection in the mirror, never once realizing that the reflection cannot and will not change until you change. The image in the mirror is just that, an image. It has no power of its own. It simply shows you what's standing in front of it. This is the hidden truth that changes everything about your journey toward abundance. The lever of power, the actual control mechanism for transforming your financial reality, it's not in the external world at all. It's not in getting a better job, though that might happen. It's not in making smarter investments, though you might do that. It's not in working harder, networking more, or finding the right opportunity, though all of those things may manifest as a result. The real lever, the only lever that matters, is your own consciousness. Every decision you make from a place of lack reinforces lack. Every thought you think from a mindset of scarcity creates more scarcity. Every feeling of unworthiness becomes a command to the creative force within you to produce more experiences that match that feeling. This is why people can win the lottery and be broke again within years. This is why some can lose everything and rebuild empires. Thus, circumstances changed, but the consciousness remained the same, and consciousness always wins. What I'm sharing with you isn't theory. This is the behind-the-scenes revelation of how reality actually operates. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. The impact of understanding this single principle is more powerful than any financial advice you've ever received, because this addresses the cause while everything else just rearranges effects. Type in the comments, "I see it now," if this revelation is landing for you. So let me tell you what you actually need. And it's not what you think. You don't need more money. I know that sounds contradictory, maybe even frustrating to hear when you're worried about bills or debt. But stay with me, because this distinction changes everything. What you truly need is to become the consciousness of wealth. Not to have wealth, to be it, to embody it, to live from that state of being, regardless of what your current bank statement says. The outer form, those numbers in your account, the physical manifestations of abundance, they're always secondary to your inner state. Always. This is why you see wealthy people lose everything in a market crash or a bad business decision. And within a remarkably short time, they've rebuilt their fortune. Did they work harder than everyone else who lost money? Did they have secret connections the others didn't? No. Their consciousness never left the state of abundance. The loss was external, temporary, just a ripple on the surface. But their identity, who they knew themselves to be at the deepest level, remained intact. And from that identity, from that inner conviction, wealth flows again as naturally as water flows downhill. On the flip side, and this is where it gets really revealing, look at what happens when someone without that consciousness suddenly inherits money or wins the lottery. Statistics show us clearly that within a few years, sometimes just months, the money vanishes. They're back where they started, or worse. The world looks at this and says they were foolish, made bad decisions, got taken advantage of. But the real story is much simpler and much more profound. Their consciousness remained in poverty. The wealth was external, imposed from outside, never integrated into their sense of self. And from that unchanged inner state, from that identity of lack, poverty recreated itself with absolute inevitability. This brings us to something that might sound mystical, but is actually the most practical truth you'll ever encounter. There's an ancient phrase, a biblical statement that's been misunderstood for centuries. I am that I am. Most people think this is about some distant deity, some God figure sitting on a throne somewhere in the heavens. But that's not what it means at all. This phrase is revealing the nature of consciousness itself, your consciousness, the awareness reading these words right now. Before you are rich or poor, before you are successful or struggling, before you are anything at all in terms of circumstances or conditions, you simply are. You exist. You are aware. That pure state of being, that fundamental awareness of your own existence, that's the creative power from which absolutely every condition in your life flows. And here's the revelation that shifts everything. That power is not separate from you. It's not something you need to find or develop or earn. It is you. It's your own wonderful human imagination. Your consciousness creating your reality moment by moment based on what you assume yourself to be. Now let me show you exactly how this operates in practical terms, because understanding the mechanism is what gives you access to change it. Leave a comment saying, "I am ready," if you're beginning to see how profound this really is. The reason most people stay trapped in financial struggle has nothing to do with their work ethic, their intelligence, or even their opportunities. It comes down to a fundamental inversion in their thinking, a backward approach that guarantees they'll keep creating what they don't want. They believe with absolute conviction that they must wait for circumstances to change before they can feel wealthy. They tell themselves, "When I get that promotion, then I'll feel secure. When I pay off this debt, then I'll feel free. When I have that amount in savings, then I'll feel abundant." But here's the revelation that flips everything on its head. This is precisely backward. This inverted approach is what keeps millions of people locked in cycles of lack, generation after generation, never understanding why their hard work doesn't produce the results they're desperately seeking. The actual truth operates in the opposite direction entirely. You must feel wealthy first, and then circumstances reorganize themselves around that feeling. Not because of some mystical magic, but because feeling is the secret. Feeling is the language your subconscious mind understands and responds to. Feeling is the mold, the template, into which reality pours itself and takes shape. Think about the profound impact of this understanding. Every time you've waited to feel good about money, until after seeing a certain number in your account, you've been operating from the effect and trying to change the cause. It doesn't work that way. It can't work that way. That's like expecting your reflection in the mirror to smile before you smile at it. The mirror has no choice. It must reflect what's in front of it. There's ancient wisdom embedded in Scripture that speaks directly to this mechanism, and most people completely miss what it's actually saying. It tells us to believe that we receive what we desire when we pray, not believe that we will receive it someday in the future, not hope it might come if we're good enough or lucky enough. Believe that we receive it. Present tense, already accomplished, already done. The believing, that feeling of already, having what you desire right now, that's the cause. The actual physical manifestation, the money showing up in your account, that's merely the effect following the cause. Your bank balance is a mirror showing you what you've been assuming about yourself and your relationship with abundance. It's not the master dictating what you can feel or who you can be. It's the servant reflecting back your inner state. And here's where your power lies, the power you've had all along, but didn't know how to access. You can change what the mirror reflects by changing what stands in front of it. Change your inner state. Change the feeling you're broadcasting, and the reflection has no choice but to transform accordingly. This isn't about pretending or lying to yourself. This is about understanding the actual sequence of creation, the behind-the-scenes process that determines what manifests in your physical reality. Now let me show you exactly what happens when you start applying this truth in a practical way, because theory without application remains just interesting information. Write, "I'm changing the reflection," in the comments if this is clicking into place for you. If you found value here, hit that like button. It helps this message reach others who need it, people standing where you were before watching this video. Let me share a real story with you that illustrates exactly how this works in the physical world, because I know some of you might be thinking, this sounds good in theory, but wondering how it plays out in actual life circumstances. There was a man who worked at a bank, not in some high-powered executive role, but in a position that barely provided enough for his family's basic needs. He had children approaching the age where education becomes expensive, where the decisions you make about their opportunities begin shaping the entire trajectory of their lives. He wasn't asking for mansions or luxury cars or fabulous wealth. He simply needed enough to maintain his home comfortably, enough to give his children access to good schools, enough to stop the constant gnawing anxiety that consumed him every time he thought about the future. That's all he wanted, just enough to breathe, to feel secure, to know his family would be okay. Seems reasonable, doesn't it? Yet when he approached his superiors about advancement possibilities, they shut him down completely. They told him, with that cold, bureaucratic language that strips away hope, that no significant improvement was possible in his position. They even suggested, with thinly veiled contempt, that if he was dissatisfied, he was free to look elsewhere, as if starting over was simple, as if the weight of responsibilities didn't bind him exactly where he was. By every external measure, this man was trapped. The circumstances declared loudly that his situation was fixed, immovable, determined by forces beyond his control. But here's what changed everything for him, and here's what can change everything for you. He came to understand a fundamental truth about reality itself. His present situation, as concrete and unchangeable as it appeared, was only a manifestation of his concept of himself. It wasn't fixed. It wasn't permanent. It wasn't decreed by his employer or the economy or bad luck or any external force whatsoever. What he was experiencing was a picture, a reflection of something much deeper. And that picture had been painted by an artist he hadn't recognized. An artist who had been working tirelessly his entire life, creating exactly what he assumed to be true. That artist was his own imagination, operating constantly through the feeling of what he believed himself to be. Every assumption he held about his limitations, about what was possible for someone in his position, about what he deserved or didn't deserve, his imagination had faithfully taken all of that and painted it into his external reality. The revelation that transforms everything is this: if you want to change the picture, you can't do it by attacking the canvas or complaining about the colors or wishing the composition were different. You can only change the picture by changing the artist's vision. And since you are the artist, since your imagination is the brush and your assumptions are the paint, you have complete authority to envision something entirely new. Type, "I'm the artist," if you're seeing how much power you actually have in this process. So this man, stuck in what seemed like an impossible situation, began a simple practice that would completely transform his reality. Every single night before falling asleep, he would lie in his bed and do something that probably sounds too simple to work, yet it changed everything. He would imagine himself at the end of one of the most important, successful days of his life, not vaguely hoping for success, not wishing things were different, but actually feeling himself in that moment of completion and satisfaction. He would feel the deep contentment of having just closed a deal that very day to join exactly the kind of organization he yearned to be part of, in precisely the capacity he had always desired. He didn't try to figure out how this would happen. He didn't map out the steps or create a strategic plan. He didn't worry about the logistics or the seeming impossibility of it all. He simply felt the end result. He inhabited the feeling of the wish already fulfilled, as if it were a memory rather than a hope. Night after night, without exception, he would enter this state before sleep. He would feel successful, not as something coming in the future, but as something that had already happened. He would taste the satisfaction, feel the relief, experience the security. And here's what's crucial. He did this with such conviction that it became more real to him than his current circumstances. The feeling displaced the anxiety. The assumption of success replaced the assumption of limitation. This was early, December when he started. And then something happened that the rational mind would call coincidence, but that demonstrates the hidden mechanics of how reality actually responds to consciousness. Within less than 2 months, in early February, a director from one of the wealthiest foundations in the world reached out to him. Not because he had sent a resume, not because he had networked or made connections or manipulated any circumstances. This director, from an organization the man had never even approached, contacted him completely unprompted, out of what the world dismisses as random chance. The director asked if he would be interested in joining the foundation in an executive capacity, handling investments. After a brief discussion, he accepted the position. And suddenly, this man who had been told by his superiors that no advancement was possible, who had seemed trapped by his circumstances just weeks earlier, found himself in a role with substantially higher income, steady career, progression, and opportunities that exceeded anything he had dared to hope for. The transformation happened not because the world suddenly decided to be generous, but because he changed what he was assuming about himself. He changed the vision, and the picture had no choice but to follow. Now let me show you what's really happening beneath the surface when you engage in this kind of practice, because understanding the mechanism gives you the confidence to apply it. Right? This is possible for me, if you're beginning to see how this could work in your own life. What happened to this bank employee wasn't luck. It wasn't coincidence. It wasn't the universe randomly deciding to smile on him. This is the part where most people get confused, where they dismiss stories like this as exceptional cases or fortunate timing. But that's not what's happening here at all. This man didn't send out hundreds of applications. He didn't network his way into connections. He didn't manipulate. Circumstances or force doors opened through sheer willpower. He lay in his bed each night and imagined. He felt the end result, as if it were already accomplished, and the entire structure of his world rearranged itself to match what he was holding in imagination. This is law. Not philosophy, not theory, not a nice idea that works sometimes if you're lucky. This is law operating with the same precision and reliability as any physical law you've ever witnessed. The world is not solid and fixed the way it appears to be. Reality is plastic, fluid, responsive in the hands of consciousness. Your consciousness. What you assume with feeling, what you persist in believing about yourself and your circumstances, that becomes the architecture of your experience. The external world has no choice but to conform, because it's a reflection, not the source. Let me share another story that demonstrates this principle from a completely different angle, because I want you to see that this isn't limited to career situations or specific scenarios. This works across every area where you need transformation. There was a mother who traveled to San Francisco to visit her daughter, expecting to find the happy, vibrant woman she'd always known. Instead, she walked into a crisis. Her daughter was in deep distress, facing a financial emergency that demanded immediate resolution. She needed $3,000, and she needed it now, not eventually, not when convenient. The mother wasn't wealthy enough to have that kind of cash readily available to hand over on the spot. But even if she had possessed it, there was another complication that made the situation even more delicate. She knew her daughter intimately, knew her pride, her fierce independence, her unwillingness to accept what she would perceive as charity, even from her own mother. Direct financial help would be refused, would create shame and distance between them. So when the daughter looked at her mother with desperate eyes, she didn't ask for money. She asked for something else entirely, something that revealed she understood there was another way to solve this. She said simply, "Help me in your way." The mother knew exactly what that meant. For years, she had studied and practiced the principles we're discussing right now. She understood that consciousness creates reality, that what you assume with feeling must manifest, that imagination is the true creative force behind all physical circumstances. And now her daughter, in her moment of crisis, was asking her to apply that knowledge. Now let me walk you through exactly what they did together, because this gets to the heart of how you can apply this in your own life starting tonight. Drop a comment saying, "I believe in this," if you're ready to see how powerful this truly is. The mother agreed to help, but with one condition that reveals something crucial about how this process works. The daughter would have to participate. They would do this together. Both of them would enter into imagination, not as passive observers hoping for a miracle, but as active creators shaping reality from within. And here's what they did, what you can do in your own situation starting right now. They closed their eyes and felt, as vividly and intensely as possible, that the problem was already solved. Not being solved, not on its way to solution, not hopefully resolving itself in the future. Solved, done, finished, accomplished. They inhabited that state with complete conviction, allowing the emotional reality of the resolution to flood through them. The relief, the gratitude, the sense of security that comes when a crisis has passed and you're standing on the other side, looking back at what is now just a memory of difficulty overcome. They didn't visualize how it would happen. They didn't try to figure out which friend might lend money or what opportunity might arise. They simply dwelt in the feeling of completion, the certainty that what needed to happen had already happened in a realm beyond the physical, and now the physical world would catch up to reflect that inner reality. What happened next defies every conventional explanation about how the world supposedly works. An old friend of the mother's, someone she hadn't seen or heard from in more than 25 years, suddenly reappeared in her life. This wasn't someone she had contacted. This wasn't someone she had been thinking about or trying to reconnect with. This person emerged from the past, from a quarter century of silence, as if drawn by invisible threads connected to her shift in consciousness. But here's where it gets even more remarkable, where the sheer magnitude of what consciousness can create becomes undeniable. This friend had become extremely wealthy in the intervening decades, and for reasons the mother never fully understood, for reasons that couldn't be traced to any logical cause, he decided to share a portion of his wealth with her. Not just the $3,000 her daughter needed. From his attorney's office came monthly checks, regular provision so generous that it covered every necessary requirement of daily living and left much over for all the lovely things of life. We're talking about a car, beautiful clothes, a spacious apartment, and most importantly, the complete freedom from needing to earn her daily bread through struggle and anxiety. This continued not for months, but for years, and eventually legal papers arrived guaranteeing the continuation of this income for the rest of her natural life. 25 years of separation dissolved, old connections rekindled, legal arrangements materialized. Provision flowed not because she earned it in any conventional sense, but because she assumed it, because she inhabited the state of abundance, because she knew the law and applied it with her daughter. Leave a comment with, "Abundance is my birthright," if you're beginning to grasp how radically different reality actually is from what you've been taught. Can you grasp the profound implication of what I just shared with you? Legal papers arrived, guaranteeing this woman's financial security for the rest of her natural life. This wasn't temporary relief. This wasn't a one-time gift. This was permanent transformation of her entire financial reality, flowing from a shift in consciousness that took place in imagination. A woman imagined. She felt the reality of abundance as if it were already present. And 25 years of separation, of silence, of disconnection, dissolved like morning fog under the rising sun. She didn't earn this through decades of work. She didn't deserve it more than anyone else struggling financially. There was no logical reason why this particular friend would emerge from the past at this particular moment with this particular generosity. But logic isn't what governs manifestation. Consciousness is. Assumption is. The feeling of the wish already fulfilled is. She knew the law, she applied it with conviction, and the law fulfilled itself with precision. Now here's what stops most people from experiencing this kind of transformation in their own lives. And I need you to really hear this because it's the difference between staying stuck and breaking through into abundance. Most people, when they hear about applying imagination to change circumstances, immediately start trying to figure out the how. Their minds race to construct a logical pathway. They think, okay, if I want more money, maybe I need to ask my boss for a raise, or look for a better job, or start a side business, or invest in this or that. And they get lost in the mechanics, paralyzed by not being able to see a clear path from where they are to where they want to be. But the how is never your concern. Do you understand what a relief this is? You cannot figure out the how in advance. You're not supposed to. Your conscious mind is too limited to see all the possible pathways, all the connections, all the seemingly unrelated events that could weave themselves together to produce your desired result. The rational mind sees closed doors and calls them impossible, but consciousness sees through walls. Your only job, your singular responsibility in this entire process is to assume the end. Feel the wish fulfilled. Occupy the state as if it were already accomplished fact. When you do this with consistency and conviction, something mysterious begins to happen. A bridge forms, a pathway opens, a series of events arranges itself that you could never have predicted or planned. This bridge of incidents, this invisible architecture connecting your current reality to your desired reality, constructs itself automatically when you maintain the assumption. The bank employee didn't know a wealthy foundation director would call. The mother didn't know a friend from 25 years ago would resurface. They couldn't have known. They didn't need to know. They simply held the state, felt the reality of their fulfilled desire, and the how revealed itself in ways their limited minds never could have conceived. Right, I trust the process if you're ready to release the need to control how your abundance arrives. There's a subtle but absolutely crucial distinction I need to share with you. And once you grasp this, your entire approach to manifestation shifts dramatically. Most people, when they want something, spend their time thinking of their desire. They look at it from a distance as something separate, something out there that they're trying to reach, trying to pull toward themselves. They think about how nice it would be to have financial security. They imagine what it would feel like to be wealthy. They picture abundance as a destination they're traveling toward. But that very approach keeps the desire perpetually in the future, always out of reach, always something to obtain, rather than something already possessed. The moment you think of your desire, you're establishing it as separate from you, as not yet yours. And consciousness, being the faithful servant it is, creates more of that separation, more of that future orientation, more of that reaching without arriving. The transformation happens when you shift from thinking of your desire to thinking from your desire. Can you feel the difference? When you think from your desire, you're already there. You've already arrived. You're not looking at abundance from the outside hoping to get in. You're standing inside. Abundance looking around at your reality, looking back at the journey as something already complete. From that state, from that vantage point of already having what you desire, the entire world reorganizes itself to match your assumption because you're no longer asking for something. You're being something. Now there's an ancient teaching that speaks directly to this principle of revision and mental rewriting, and most people completely miss what it's actually revealing. In the Gospel of Luke, there's a parable about a steward, a manager of another man's estate, who gets accused of wasting his master's goods. He's about to lose his position, his livelihood, his security. So what does he do? He calls in every person who owes his master money, and he falsifies the records. He tells one person who owes 100 measures of oil to write down 50. He tells another who owes 100 measures of wheat to write down 80. He's literally rewriting the debts, changing what's owed, altering the official records. And here's what shocks people when they really read this parable carefully. The master commends him. The master praises him, not for his honesty because he wasn't honest, not for his morality because he violated the rules, but for his shrewdness, for his willingness to rewrite what was written, for his understanding that records can be changed, that what appears fixed on paper is actually fluid in consciousness. This parable is teaching you something profound about the power of revision, about your ability to mentally rewrite the debts and records of your own consciousness. Now let me show you exactly how to apply this ancient wisdom to your current financial situation, because this is where theory becomes practice. Type, "I'm rewriting my story" in the comments if you're ready to learn this technique. You are the steward in this parable. Can you see it? Your deeper self, that infinite creative consciousness we talked about earlier, that's the master. And the debtors, those are your circumstances, the situations in your life that seem to have claims on you, that seem to determine what's possible for you. The falsification the parable speaks of, that's revision. That's the art of mentally rewriting what has been, of going back into your imagination and changing the records of consciousness itself. When your past speaks of financial limitation, when your memory holds scenes of struggle and lack, when your personal history is filled with evidence that you're not good with money or that abundance isn't for people like you have a choice. Most people accept these records as fixed, as permanent documentation of who they are and what they're capable of. But that's not the truth. Those records exist in consciousness, and what exists in consciousness can be revised in consciousness. This is the hidden mechanism behind transformation that changes everything once you understand it. You can go back in your imagination to the moment when someone told you that you'd never be wealthy, and you can replay that scene with different words spoken, with different messages received. You can go back to the memory of financial crisis or struggle, and you can mentally rewrite it so that provision appeared, so that help came, so that things worked out easily. You're not lying to yourself. You're not denying what happened in the physical timeline. You're operating at the level of cause, rewriting the emotional and mental records that are still, actively creating your present experience. What your imagination made, it can unmake. This is the power you've had all along, but didn't know how to access. what has been recorded in consciousness as limitation, as lack, as unworthiness, as financial struggle, all of that can be revised. And here's where the real magic happens, where the practical impact becomes undeniable. When you revise a memory and accept the revision as more real than the original. When you feel the new version as true and let it displace the old emotional charge, the outer world must conform. It has no choice. The outer world is a mirror of consciousness, and you've just changed what's reflected in that mirror. This isn't about positive thinking or affirmations that contradict your experience. This is about understanding that your past isn't a fixed reality, but a collection of impressions held in consciousness. And those impressions are still radiating influence into your present moment. Change the impression at I. The level of cause and the effects must change. Now let me give you a specific example of how powerful this revision technique can be when applied consistently, because I want you to see concrete results, not just abstract theory. Right, I'm revising my past. If this concept is opening new possibilities in your mind, everything you experience, every circumstance in your financial life, every limitation you encounter, it all begins with two simple words that you speak either aloud or in the silence of your own mind. These two words carry more creative power than any other phrase in human language. I am. Think about that for a moment. I am. Before you say anything else, before you attach any condition or description, those two words establish your state of being, your identity, the foundation from which your entire reality constructs itself. When you say, I am poor, you're not just describing your current bank balance. You're not merely observing a temporary condition. You're issuing a creative command to the force within you that shapes your experience. You're declaring an identity, and that identity becomes the lens through which you perceive opportunities, make decisions, and attract circumstances. When you say, I am worried about money, you're not expressing a passing emotion. You're occupying a state, and the state you occupy determines what you experience, because this creative power within you doesn't judge your declarations. It doesn't ask whether they're true or false, healthy or destructive, serving you or limiting you. It simply obeys. It takes your I am statement and goes to work faithfully, bringing that declaration into visible, tangible form in your physical reality. This is why your inner speech matters so profoundly. Every time you think or speak the words, I am followed by limitation, you're giving instructions for more limitation. Every time you declare, I am struggling, or I am broke, or I am not good with money, you're planting seeds that must bear fruit according to their kind. But here's the transformation that changes everything. You can choose different words. You have the authority to declare a different identity right now, in this moment, regardless of what your circumstances currently show. There's wisdom in ancient scripture that speaks directly to this principle, and it's one of the most misunderstood passages because people read it as moral encouragement rather than as instruction in creative law. It says, let the weak man say, I am strong, not let the strong man acknowledge his strength. Let the weak man, the one who appears limited, the one whose circumstances scream weakness, let that person say, I am strong. Why? Because when you say it with feeling, when you occupy the state of strength as if it were already yours, you rearrange the very substance of consciousness. And rearranged consciousness must manifest as rearranged circumstances. This isn't metaphor. This is mechanism. The world around you is a mirror. That's all it is. That's all it's ever been. It doesn't have the power to show you anything except what you're already showing it from within. Change what you're broadcasting from consciousness. Change the I am declarations you're making. And the mirror has no choice but to reflect something different. Now let me show you exactly how to use this principle starting today to transform your relationship with money at the deepest level. Leave I am abundant in the comments if you're ready to claim a new identity. Here's what liberates you from every limitation you've ever experienced. You have infinite freedom in choosing your assumptions. Infinite. There is no external force, no person, no circumstance, no bank balance, no past failure that can stop you from imagining yourself wealthy, successful, and abundant right now in this moment. The prison you're living in has no locked doors. The walls that seem so solid are actually made of nothing more substantial than your own repeated thoughts, your habitual assumptions about what's possible for you. The real limitation isn't in the universe, isn't in the economy, isn't in your job or your education or your background. The limitation is in your unwillingness to assume what you currently believe is impossible. You've drawn a circle around yourself labeled realistic expectations and convinced yourself that anything outside that circle is fantasy, wishful thinking, not for people like you. But that circle isn't real. It's a mental construct you've been maintaining through constant repetition of limiting beliefs. Here's the revelation that shatters that circle completely. Nothing is impossible to consciousness. Nothing. The same creative force that transforms a single cell into a complete human being, that orchestrates the movement of planets, that coordinates the unfathomable complexity of the natural world. That force is your consciousness, and it doesn't recognize the word impossible. It only recognizes assumption. What you assume, it creates. What you persist in feeling as real, it manifests. But here's where most people unknowingly sabotage themselves, where they stand at the threshold of transformation and then talk themselves right back into limitation. It happens through inner speech, that constant stream of conversation you carry on with yourself from the moment you wake until you fall asleep. Most people are completely unaware of this inner dialogue. They don't hear themselves saying, "I can't afford that," every time they see something they desire. They don't notice the automatic refrain of money is always tight, or something always goes wrong, or people like me don't get breaks like that. These phrases run on autopilot, like background programs executing on a computer you didn't even know was turned on. And because they're unconscious, because you're not actively choosing them, they continue creating your reality without your awareness or consent. Your inner speech is literally constructing your tomorrow. Every word you speak to yourself in the privacy of your own mind is a seed planted in the fertile soil of consciousness, and every seed must bring forth fruit according to its nature. Think about the profound impact of this realization. If your inner speech has been creating lack, struggle, and limitation without your conscious participation, imagine what it could create if you took control of it. If you deliberately chose words of abundance, ease, and prosperity. Now, let me give you the exact practice for transforming your inner speech, starting with the most powerful time of day for planting new seeds. Type, "I choose my words," if you're ready to take conscious control of what you're creating. There's an ancient text written by the Apostle James that speaks directly to this power of words in a way that most people gloss over without understanding its profound implications. He wrote that the entire manifested world, everything you see around you, every circumstance in your life, goes to show what use you've made of the word. Not just the words you speak aloud, but the words you speak in the privacy of your own consciousness. He says the tongue is a little member, small and seemingly insignificant, yet it kindles great fires. It sets the course of your entire existence. Your inner speech is that tongue. It's the match that lights either the flame of abundance or the flame of lack, depending on what you're saying to yourself beneath the threshold of conscious awareness. Every time you internally comment on a price being too expensive, you're fanning the flames of poverty. Every time you mentally rehearse scenarios of financial struggle, you're feeding fuel to limitation. And because this happens automatically, because you've been doing it for so long it feels natural, you don't even realize you're the one holding the match. But here's where your journey toward transformation becomes practical, where understanding converts into action. You must begin observing your inner talking, not judging it, not fighting it, just becoming aware of it. Catch yourself in the act of assuming limitation. Notice when you internally say, "I can't afford that," or "this is too expensive," or "I don't have enough." The moment you become conscious of these phrases, you've already begun to loosen their grip on your reality. Then comes the deliberate replacement, the conscious reconstruction of your inner dialogue. You replace the old speech with new speech that matches your fulfilled desire, not your current circumstances. Instead of "I can't afford it," you begin saying internally, "I have a large, steady, dependable income." Instead of "money is always tight," you declare "money flows to me easily and consistently." Instead of "I'm worried about bills," you affirm "I am always provided for. Abundance is my natural state." At first, these new declarations will feel like lies. Your rational mind will protest, will present evidence, will tell you you're being unrealistic. But you're not trying to convince your rational mind. You're impressing your subconscious, and the subconscious doesn't argue with what you persistently affirm with feeling. It simply accepts and creates. So you repeat these new phrases not as empty affirmations, not as wishes you hope might come true, but as declarations of an inner truth that your outer world hasn't yet caught up with. You repeat them until something shifts, until they begin to feel less like wishes and more like memories, less like hopes and more like facts. This is the mental diet that transforms consciousness, and transformed consciousness must produce transformed circumstances. Now let me share with you the single most powerful time to engage in this practice. The gateway moment when conscious and subconscious merge. Drop "I'm changing my inner speech" in the comments if you're committing to this transformation. Sleep. 1/3 of your entire existence is spent in this state. Yet most people treat it as nothing more than a biological necessity, a time when the body repairs itself and the mind goes dark. But sleep is so much more than that. Sleep is the natural door into your subconscious mind, the sacred threshold where your conscious awareness and your subconscious creative power merge together in perfect union. This is the gateway moment I was telling you about. The time when what you impress upon consciousness sinks deepest and manifests fastest. Here's the principle that changes everything about how you approach your nightly rest. What you take into sleep as a feeling, you bring out as a condition. Read that again slowly. The mood in which you fall asleep, the emotional state you're occupying as you drift from waking consciousness into the realm of dreams. That's the seed you're planting in the garden of your subconscious. And unlike your conscious mind that questions and doubts and analyzes, your subconscious accepts whatever seed you give it and faithfully reproduces it in your waking reality. If you fall asleep worried about money, you plant seeds of worry that will sprout as more situations to worry about. If you drift into unconsciousness, feeling the weight of debt and limitation, you're instructing your creative power to produce more debt and limitation. But if you can enter sleep feeling wealthy, feeling provided for, feeling the satisfaction of abundance already present, you plant seeds that must grow into experiences matching that feeling. There's a passage in the Song of Solomon that reveals this process in poetic language that most people read as romantic verse, without understanding its deeper meaning. It speaks of seeking by night on the bed him whom my soul loveth. This isn't about a physical lover. This is describing the imaginative act, the nightly practice of seeking the feeling of your wish fulfilled. You lie in your bed and you seek that feeling, that state of consciousness where your desire already exists as accomplished fact. When you find it, when you can actually feel the reality of abundance, of security, of wealth, you hold it. You don't let it go. You bring it into what the text calls the chamber of her that conceived you. That chamber is your subconscious mind, the womb of all creation, the place where invisible assumptions become visible realities. This is where transformation happens, not in the doing and striving of your waking hours, but in the surrendered state of sleep when you consciously choose the feeling you're gifting to your creative power. Now let me give you the exact practice for tonight, the specific way to use this knowledge to begin manifesting abundance immediately. Type, "Tonight I plant abundance," if you're ready to use sleep as your tool for transformation. Tonight, when you lie down in your bed, you're going to perform a ritual. Whether you realize it or not, whether you do it consciously or unconsciously, you're engaging in an act of creation that will shape your tomorrow. This happens every single night. You've been doing it your entire life. The only question is whether you've been doing it by default, letting whatever mood happens to be present at bedtime plant seeds in your subconscious, or whether you're going to take conscious control of this powerful process. If you fall asleep in worry, those are the seeds going into the ground. If you drift off feeling the heavy weight of financial stress, feeling the fear of not having enough, feeling the anxiety about bills and obligations, those feelings are instructions to your creative power. They're telling your subconscious exactly what kind of experiences to manufacture for you tomorrow, next week, next month. And your subconscious, being the faithful servant it is, will obey without question. But here's where your freedom lives, where your power to choose a different path reveals itself. You can lie down tonight and choose to feel abundant. You can close your eyes and experience wealth in your imagination as vividly as if it were already manifested in your bank account. You can feel the security, the ease, the relief, the joy of having more than enough. And if you can maintain that feeling, if you can actually fall asleep while inhabiting that state of abundance, you plant seeds that absolutely must bear fruit. This is law, not hope. There's a principle here that's so important, I need you to really absorb it, to let it sink into your understanding at the deepest level. Never, under any circumstances, go to sleep feeling discouraged or dissatisfied. The last feeling of your day, the emotional state you're carrying as you cross the threshold into unconsciousness, this is not something to leave to chance. This is not something to be careless about. The ancient wisdom speaks to this when it says, quoting sacred text, "Thou art all fair, my love, there is no spot in thee." What this means for your practice is profound. Your assumption before sleep must be perfect and complete in your own mind. Not perfect in the sense that it matches some external standard, but perfect in the sense that there's no doubt mixed in, no hesitation, no qualification. You don't go to sleep thinking maybe I'll be abundant or I hope things get better. You go to sleep knowing, feeling, experiencing the completeness of your fulfilled desire. From this perfect assumption, from this wholehearted occupancy of the wish already accomplished, perfect results must flow according to the law. Now let me walk you through exactly what to do tonight, step by step, so you can begin applying this immediately and experiencing the transformation in your financial reality. Comment: My sleep creates wealth if you're committed to using this practice starting tonight. Before I give you the exact nightly practice, there's one more technique I need to share with you because it might be the most powerful tool you'll ever learn for transforming your relationship with money. It's called revision, and it addresses something most people don't understand about how the past actually works. You think your past is dead, finished, locked away in memory with no power over your present. But that's not true at all. Everything that has ever happened to you is still happening right now in consciousness. Your past isn't a collection of dead events filed away in some mental archive. It's living, active, operating beneath the surface of your awareness to influence your present decisions and shape your future possibilities. Those scenes of financial struggle from years ago, that moment when you felt the shame of not being able to afford something, that conversation where someone told you money doesn't come easily to people like you, these aren't just memories. They're active influences still radiating their effects into your current reality like a radio tower, broadcasting signals that shape what you perceive and experience. But here's the revelation that changes everything about your relationship with your own history. If the past can reach forward and recreate itself into your present, then the revised past can do exactly the same thing. What happened in your external timeline is fixed, yes, but what lives in consciousness as the emotional and mental imprint of what happened, that's fluid. That can be changed. That can be rewritten. You can go back in memory, not to relive painful scenes, but to remake them. You replay the scene of financial crisis as it ought to have been played, with provision appearing, with help arriving, with things working out easily and gracefully. You take that moment when you felt ashamed about money, and you revise it so that you felt confident, secure, abundant. You replay that conversation where limiting words were spoken, and you hear different words, empowering words, words that affirm your worthiness and capability. The key is this: you must feel the revised version as more real than the original. This isn't just imagination for entertainment. This is surgical work on consciousness itself. When you revise a memory and invest it with feeling until it displaces the emotional charge of the original, something profound happens. You destroy the influence of that original event. You remove the cause that has been producing effects in your present. And when the cause is removed, the present and future must change accordingly. This is revision resulting in repeal. Now let me show you how to combine this revision practice with your nightly assumption to create a complete transformation protocol that addresses both past wounds and future manifestation simultaneously. Write, "I'm revising my financial past," if you're ready to release the hold that old stories have on your current reality. Let me tell you a story that demonstrates just how powerful this revision technique can be when applied with consistency and conviction. There was a woman who had suffered from chronic hip pain for nearly 40 years. 4 decades of discomfort, of limitation, of medical bills and treatments that provided only temporary relief. The pain had begun when she was just a small child, maybe 3 or 4 years old, from a fall off a swing at a playground. That single moment of childhood accident had echoed through her entire life, creating persistent physical suffering that doctors couldn't resolve. She learned about revision, about this principle of mentally rewriting the past, and she began a nightly practice. Every night before sleep, she would go back in her imagination to that playground, to that swing, to that moment when she was a carefree child playing. But instead of falling backward and getting injured, she replayed the scene as it should have been. She felt herself as that little girl pumping her legs, going higher and higher on the swing, and then, at the perfect moment, jumping forward with joy and confidence, landing solidly on her feet, completely safe, running to her mother to show off what she'd accomplished. She didn't just visualize this once. She practiced it faithfully, night after night, feeling the wind on her face as the swing rose higher, feeling the excitement of the jump, feeling the solid ground beneath her feet as she landed perfectly. And here's what happened. Within 2 months, pain that had persisted for 40 years began to recede. Within a short time after that, it was gone completely. A condition that had cost her a small fortune in medical expenses, that had limited her movement and her joy for most of her life, disappeared because she revised the cause in consciousness. Now, tonight, when you lie down in your bed, you're going to use this same principle combined with assumption to create your financial transformation. Here's exactly what you do. Lie flat on your back, close your eyes, and begin to relax. Let go of the day. Let go of concerns. Let go of the mental noise that normally fills your mind. Feel yourself entering that borderland state between waking and sleeping. That drowsy, peaceful state where consciousness becomes fluid and impressionable. In this state, you're going to imagine from within, not watching yourself from outside like a movie, but actually living the experience. Create a scene that implies your wish is already fulfilled. Feel your phone in your hand as you check your bank balance and see a number that makes you smile with satisfaction. Hear someone congratulating you on your financial success. Experience yourself purchasing something you've wanted easily without anxiety or hesitation. Or simply feel the deep contentment, the profound peace that comes when money is no longer a concern in your life. The scene itself doesn't matter as much as the feeling it generates. Now let me tell you exactly what to do with that feeling once you've created it, because this is where most people stop too soon. Leave "I'm practicing tonight" in the comments if you're committing to this complete process. Once you've created your scene, once you're inhabiting that moment of fulfilled desire, here's what separates those who manifest from those who just daydream. The subconscious mind doesn't respond to mental pictures. It doesn't care how vividly you visualize. What it responds to, what it accepts as instruction, what it takes as the blueprint for creating your reality, is feeling. Pure feeling. The emotional state you're occupying in that moment. So you don't just see the bank balance in your mind's eye. You feel what it's like to have that balance. You feel the relief flooding through your body. You feel the security settling into your bones. You feel the smile forming on your face. You immerse yourself so completely in the feeling of abundance that the imagined scene begins to shift from something you're creating to something you're remembering. That's the transformation you're looking for, that subtle but profound shift where imagination stops feeling like make-believe and starts feeling like memory. Feel until the scene becomes natural, until it stops requiring effort to maintain, until it feels inevitable rather than hopeful. When that sense of naturalness arrives, when you're dwelling in the feeling without strain or force, you've succeeded. That's the moment of conception. Now comes the final and most crucial step. You let go. You don't analyze whether you did it right. You don't question if it worked. You don't open your eyes and check your phone to see if money appeared. You simply fall asleep in that feeling, trusting completely that the seed you've planted will grow according to its own perfect timing. But here's what I need you to understand about timing, about the journey from assumption to manifestation, because this is where many people lose faith and abandon the practice just before their breakthrough. The law works for everyone who applies it correctly. This isn't reserved for special people or lucky souls. This is universal law, as available to you as gravity is to everyone, standing on Earth. But it doesn't work instantly in most cases. There's a time interval between planting the seed and harvesting the fruit. You don't plant corn and wake up the next morning to find fully grown stalks. Nature has its rhythm, and so does consciousness. Though the manifestation may seem to delay, though days or weeks might pass without visible change, it will surely come if you persist. There's an ancient story about a man who went to his neighbor's door at midnight needing bread. The neighbor was already in bed and didn't want to get up, but the man kept knocking, kept asking, kept persisting in his request. And finally, the door opened. You are that man. Your subconscious is the neighbor comfortable in old patterns. But if you persist in your assumption, if you keep knocking at the door with feeling night after night, if you refuse to accept no for an answer, the door must open. The bread must be given. Your wish must manifest. Now let me address what happens when doubt creeps in, because it will. And knowing how to handle it makes all the difference. Type, I persist until it manifests. If you're ready to commit to this practice, no matter how long it takes. You've made it this far, and that tells me something important about you. You're not just casually browsing for entertainment. You're genuinely searching for transformation, for the hidden keys that unlock a different reality. Most people click away when teachings get this deep, when the truth starts, requiring something from them. But you stayed. That matters. If this resonated with you, if something shifted inside as you listened, I want to invite you to subscribe to this channel. This isn't about numbers for me. It's about creating a space where people who are ready for real change can find practical wisdom that actually works. Every video I create is designed to give you tools you can use immediately, not just theories to think about. So hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and let's continue this journey together. And do me a favor, leave a comment right now saying, this message was meant for me. Not for the algorithm, though that helps, but because there's power in declaration, in publicly claiming your readiness for transformation. Your comment becomes part of your commitment to yourself. If you found value in what we explored today, go ahead and hit that like button. It helps this message reach others who need it, others who are standing exactly where you were, standing before you clicked on this video. Now, there's something else I need to share with you. There's a video right here that goes even deeper into how to maintain these states of consciousness when life throws challenges at you, when circumstances seem to contradict everything you're assuming. It's the perfect companion to what you just learned. Click on it and continue with me over there. Your transformation is just beginning.